Welcome to The Coaching Corner, a podcast for coaches coaching in the child welfare field. I'm your host, James Coloma, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about safety planning with families using safety organized practice. In a moment, Kim Giardina will join us on today's episode to help us understand more about this topic. I'm your host, James Coloma, and we'll be right back. So hi, Kim.
Hi, James.
Welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Kim Giardina. I'm currently a manager in San Diego County in our Policy and Program Support Division. I've been with Child Welfare Services for over 14 years, worked as a trainer for about 10 years. I've been training safety organized practice for the last almost 5 years now and have worked as a coach for safety organized practice as well. So I'm passionate about that particular practice model.
Great. So when we talk about safety planning, that's not a new concept, but what, in your instance, what is safety planning?
Well, you're right. It's not a new concept, and I think it's something that as we've evolved in child welfare, our concept of safety planning has evolved. Essentially, it's something we're doing with families all the time, right? Every time we go out and contact them, we're really doing some safety planning. But there are also some sort of concrete moments in which we need to safety plan with families, and we often think of those in terms of like immediate safety planning, our very first contact with a family. Is there something that poses a harm or danger to that child? Ongoing safety planning, which we usually call case planning, and then aftercare planning. Once we're no longer involved in this family's life, how are we going to make sure that they don't come back to be involved with the child welfare system?
So let's talk about immediate safety planning with the family first. What is that? How do you do that?
Well, immediate safety planning is usually happening when a worker goes out on an investigation or even on maybe a home visit, and there's something that's posing an immediate threat to that child, where if we don't put something in place right now at this moment, we're really worried that something dangerous could happen to that child. And so it's that point when the worker begins to join with the family, ensuring that the family is really clear about what we're worried about, and work with the family to come up with some concrete actions that we can put in place right then to mitigate the danger to that child.
So you're using words like worried and mitigate the danger. How is that new terminology for use with SOP?
Well, safety organized practicing has really helped us get clear about what we mean when we talk about things like safety and risk. So the terminology we use in safety organized practice is usually around harm and danger. So harm is any thing that has already actually hurt the child. So it's something that has happened in the past. We can't change that part of it. So if a parent has hit a child and left an injury, that's harm. It actually happened to the child. Danger is what we're worried might happen to the child in the future based on what we know about the family's past. So a lot of times in child welfare, the reason we're getting involved is really because we have some worries. We have some identified danger about the parent's potential action and the impact that might have on the child. For example, neglect cases. We're worried that maybe the parents are not going to provide enough food for the children and that they could get sick and require medical attention. That would be things we'd be worried about happening. It may not have happened yet, but we're worried it could happen in the future. So those are the areas that we want to do some safety planning around.
So with an immediate safety plan then, is it more harm that we're worried about?
It could be. It could be both harm and danger. So oftentimes we go out and there is some harm, and so we need to do some immediate safety planning to ensure that harm doesn't happen. Usually what happens is if we can't do safety planning, then it means we probably have to take that child into protective custody. And so we're trying to do the safety plan to avoid taking that child into protective custody. Of course, safety is always our bottom line, and so if we're not able to safety plan with that family, we may still need to make that choice. But oftentimes, through really good engagement, clear identification of the harm and danger, and then putting in some good elements of a good safety plan, we often can do a good safety plan and still allow that child to remain in the home safely. So yes, it may be around harm, but there are often times when we are going to plan around danger as well, even on an immediate safety plan. I think domestic violence is one of those examples where we're often going to do some planning. Maybe we got on a call. The perpetrator might actually even currently be out of the home. Maybe he or she is arrested and incarcerated, but we know they're going to get out in a few days. We know that, restraining orders are only as good as, how much they're followed. So we're still going to need to do some immediate safety planning with families to ensure that when the perpetrator gets out or the couple gets back together, that child's not in danger anymore.
So you had mentioned there are 3 types of safety plans, and we just covered immediate. What's the next one?
Well, the next one would be ongoing safety planning, which we really call case planning. And so, there's a lot more elements to case planning because it happens over a lot longer period of time. But essentially, it's just planning for safety once we've closed a case.
And then what's the third one? What's the third type of a safety plan?
The third one is aftercare. And so once a family has completed their case plan and they're reunified and we're ready to close the case, we want to work with the family so that they can develop their own case plan, their own ongoing safety plan, so that they can work together as a family with all of their support systems to make sure that nothing happens again that child welfare needs to become involved in their life. And so we think about that as sort of that aftercare plan.
So what makes a good safety plan, whether it's an immediate safety plan, a case plan, or an aftercare plan?
Well, I think there are common elements in all good safety plans. So like I mentioned before, workers have to be able to clearly articulate the harm or the danger that's posing the threat to the child. And so workers should be able to develop strong harm and danger statements to share with the family, getting the family's input. Is this what the family is worried about? Do they understand why this poses an impact to their child? So that we can hear the family's voice represented in the development of those harm and danger statements. So that's sort of one end. The other end is we need to have a safety goal. What are we trying to accomplish through the use of this safety plan? How will we know that it will be safe either to leave the child in the home or return the child back to the home or close the case, whatever we're working on? We won't know that unless we've got a really clearly articulated safety goal. I sort of like to think of those as our bookends in child welfare. Our harm and danger statements are where we start from, and the safety goal is where we end up. So in between, for a safety plan, then we have to have several steps. And this is where it varies a little bit in terms of how rapidly these steps need to occur based on the type of safety plan that we're working on. So for an immediate safety plan, it's immediate. The steps have to be put in place right away. So we need to develop concrete action steps, and this needs to include all the questions we learned in school, the who, what, where, when, how, right? Who is going to do which action step? We need to clearly articulate that. And who's their backup plan? If Auntie is going to come over and check on Mom, what if Auntie gets sick? Who's going to come over and check on Mom? So we need to have those backup plans. When is everybody going to do those action steps? What specifically are they going to do? Coming over and checking on Mom? That's pretty vague. What's she looking for? What is she checking in on Mom? Is she asking some concrete questions? Is she talking to the children? What really do we need her to do? And then how often is this going to happen? We also need to make sure that there's monitoring of the safety plan. And this doesn't have to just be left up to the worker. I think oftentimes staff feel like it all falls on them, and it really doesn't. The critical piece is including the network in the safety planning process. So Auntie can call you and say, when I went over and saw Mom, this is what I found. That's monitoring. That lets us know whether or not the plan is working. First of all, we knew Auntie actually did her part. And second, we're getting an update on what Mom said was going on. And she probably saw the children and can give us an update on that as well. So we want to make sure we have some good monitoring in place. With all safety plans, we want to give families a chance to practice implementing the safety plan. As often as we can, we should try some dry runs. I know this can be a challenge in our busy child welfare schedule, but if we don't get a chance to practice picking up the phone and calling for help, we don't know that it's really going to work. Do we have the right phone number? Is it a good time? Are all the steps really capable of keeping this child safe? So we want a chance to practice those opportunities. And then we have to understand that our safety plans need to be flexible. Nobody works in a rigid environment. Families are not black and white. So we may think we have a great safety plan developed the first time, and then, whoops, we forgot something, or something fell through the cracks. That doesn't mean that the family's uncooperative or not engaged. It just means maybe we missed something, and so we need to go back and revisit our safety plan and build it up. The most critical step of the safety plan is then putting it all into words and language that the child can understand and being certain that we're sharing our safety plan with the children in the family. Oftentimes they feel like the adults are just making decisions around them in their lives. They know they were unsafe. They know they told somebody, this social worker, that they were unsafe, and now a bunch of stuff is happening to them. But what's the point? What's the purpose? And if I'm supposed to go home, what's going to make me stay safe from now compared to before? And so we need to explain that to children.
It sounds to me that when developing a safety plan, it's important to develop it not only with that family, but also with the kid.
Absolutely. The family, their support system, oftentimes the safety organized practice, we call that their safety network, and the children as well.
So those were the elements that are similar to each of the three types of safety plans we've talked about. What makes each safety plan unique?
Usually what makes it unique is the time frame within which it has to be done. You know, for those immediate safety plans, a worker has to get that safety plan done before they leave that house. If we've identified a threat or harm or a danger that really is immediate danger to that child, that we're worried that, gosh, if I walk out of here, something really bad could happen in the next few days, we need to put a plan in place right now before that worker leaves the home. So that can be challenging. You know, we need to pull the network together very quickly. Oftentimes families are hesitant to want to share with their network about what's going on. It can feel a little bit shameful maybe to have child welfare involved in your life. So workers who are working on immediate safety plans need to do a really good job engaging the family and engaging the network around the reason for the safety planning process. And usually this is where we can come together. Families don't want their children removed from them, and we don't want to remove their children. So we always usually have at least one common goal, even if we don't agree about the reasons behind that goal. So we can try to pull the family together to come up with that immediate safety plan. For ongoing safety plans or case plans, we have a little bit more time. You know, usually parents are going to be working on it for 6 months or a year. So we want to use it as a building block process. Then maybe there's something, we want to work on that's going to take a little bit more long term. It's not something we can resolve today, right now. And so we want to do a more long-term process. So we have a little bit more time. That also is helpful in getting more time to allow the network to be involved. So even though we're not trying to resolve a problem today, the network still needs to be involved on those ongoing safety plans, because at some point, child welfare is not going to be involved in their life anymore, and we want people around who can still support the family. And then for the aftercare safety plans, those are going to be ones that last forever. Hopefully by this point in a case, we've engaged the family well enough that they can really develop their own aftercare safety plan. This needs to be their plan because it's after child welfare is involved, and so they need to be helped to think through what has worked well for them over this period of time that they've been in child welfare. How have they built some strengths in their family? How have they developed safety in a way that they didn't have it before for their children? And then what do they want to do to maintain that safety now that it's been created in their family? So I think that's the biggest difference.
You mentioned earlier about documentation and making sure that we take these safety plans and we put it into words that the family and the child understand. Do you have a recommended place about where we capture this information?
Well, I think each jurisdiction might be a little bit different. I know most jurisdictions, at least for immediate safety planning, use an immediate safety plan document, and it's usually like a 1 or 2 page template document that you'll want to document your action steps. Workers are often usually required to enter it into their CWS-CMS contact narrative for when they go out with that family. In some jurisdictions, supervisors are required to sign off on the safety plan when they get back to the office to make sure that they were in agreement with what the family and the worker developed together. Obviously, if it's an ongoing safety plan and it's going to go in a case plan, then we need to document that in the case plan. This is a little bit where our CWS-CMS system poses some challenges to maybe the way we want to do case planning nowadays, and so there's some workarounds in working within Word to get it to be a little bit more concrete what we're looking for. And then for the aftercare safety plans, I think we would just document them in the contact narrative so that, and unfortunately, if the family does come back in, the next worker can see, well, this was the plan. What happened? What didn't work with that plan? So that we have a place to document that. I know many court systems also prefer to have the content of the safety plans documented in the court reports if we do end up having to get the court involved with the family so that they can see what the plan is going to be.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's helpful, not only for me to know where they go, but I think for other listeners on this podcast about some ideas of where to put this information into the U.S. CMS, or at least where to document.
Absolutely. We want workers to get credit for the work that they do, right?
Absolutely. So if I was a coach and I was going to use this information to help coach either workers or supervisors, how do you think that I could use this information?
Well, as a coach, I often try to just help coach workers thinking through the different elements of a safety plan. So making sure that workers were really comfortable writing harm and danger statements and safety goals, and utilizing solution-focused questions to help them even begin to develop those statements and goals for families. We always want to get the family's voice, but it can be easier to start with something and take that out to the family to share with them. And so helping workers sort of get started on that process as a coach. So I would ask questions about what has worked in the past for the family, ask some scaling questions to get to what the worker might need to see. So try to use the similar tools that they would want to use with a family during coaching. I would also really help them focus on the concrete actions. I think this is where workers particularly struggle. For a long time, at least in my experience in child welfare, we've done pretty general goals, or we've focused much more on services rather than the outcome, the objective of what we want parents to learn from those services. So helping workers develop very concrete objectives. If it was a physical abuse case, great. The objective is we want the parents to stop hitting their kids. Well, stop hitting is great, but what do we want them to do instead? What would that look like? So that their safety plan is not a list of don'ts, but a list of do's. And what do we want the parents to be doing instead? And that can be really hard to think through. So helping workers try to get down to that level. I often use questions like, if it was your own family, what would you be doing? And think through that piece. Sometimes it can be easier to think about it that way. And then under each objective, there's often usually what we call safety actions, which are 2 or 3 steps that the family is going to take that will show us that they're really making progress in an area. So, for example, we'll have things like, the aunt will call mom every day to check in and ask a scaling question of 0 to 10 on how depressed mom is feeling that day, and then report back to the social worker. We'll ask mom, at what level do we need to send in some other intervention, and so they can check in with mom every day. So maybe the overarching objective is that mom will learn how to manage her sadness and fear, and one of the ways she'll do that is with some help from the aunt, and so we can have those concrete safety actions. This is where we often need the family's input, however, because we can't know who in the network is going to need to do all that. So the worker can maybe have some ideas in their head before they go out to meet with the family, but we really need the family's involvement to articulate those particular safety actions. I think the area of the safety goal is an area that I often do a lot of coaching on for workers. It's very hard for us to say, I need a family to do this, this, and this before I feel it would be safe to either be out of their life or return this child home, wherever we're at. And even more difficult is for workers to articulate a time frame within which they need to see that happening. And those are all elements of a good safety goal, that we need to see the family, being able to regularly feed their child, provide them with regular medical care, and, making sure that they're supervised properly, that there are safe people around them all the time. That we need to see this plan in place for 6 months or longer before we feel like it would be safe to close this case. So whatever we need to do to help workers think through that and really think through that time frame. So in developing the safety goal, we want to help workers think through what is it that they really need to see happening, and then what's the time frame that we need to see that occurring for in order to feel that it's really safe for this child to return home or for us to close the case. And so helping the worker articulate specifically what do we need to see the parents doing, and then things like feeding the child every day, taking the child to medical appointments, ensuring that the child is regularly supervised, whatever the issues were for the family. And then how long? Do they need to see this happening for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year? Depending on the history of the family and the severity of the abuse or neglect that occurred, we'll need to see different time frames for different families. And so helping workers think through that. And that can be challenging. I think often in the past, my personal experience has been we usually just tell families, well, we just need to see it happening for a while, or it's up to the court, or we don't really make concrete statements to the family about how long. And that can be pretty disheartening to a family. So to empower them, we need to give them, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. If you do this for 6 months, great, I'll feel like it's safe for your kid to come home. So helping coach workers through that and managing their own feelings around that process.
So thank you for giving us that information about how to use this information in a coaching session. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add about safety planning with families?
I just think the more that I've been able to do safety planning and really getting the network involved, I just feel like our safety plans are so much more thorough and really built to actually keep that child safe. You know, I know I used to write safety plans that would say, okay, the parents agreed to not use drugs anymore. Okay, well, great. If it was that easy, we wouldn't need to be involved in the first place. And so the fact that we can get to a place in our safety plans where we do have network members involved, where we do have the family understanding specific concrete steps, and that then we actually tell the child, this is what's going to be different about your family, so that they can let us know if it's working or not. I know in the experiences I've had, I'm better able to sleep at night with the way that we're doing safety planning now compared to how I used to do my practice.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I agree with you. I think focusing on what the parents can do or should do, as opposed to what they shouldn't be doing in their safety plans, does allow families and children to know what changes should be occurring.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Kim, anything else that you wanted to add?
No, thanks for having me.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us today, Kim. We'll be right back. You've been listening to The Coaching Corner from the Public Child Welfare Training Academy Radio through the Academy for Professional Excellence at San Diego State University School of Social Work. For more information about the Academy for Professional Excellence and the services we offer, please visit us on the web at theacademy.sdsu.edu. You can also subscribe to the Academy for Professional Excellence's YouTube channel by searching for the Academy SDSU. If you want to get hold of us and let us know what you think about this podcast, please send me an email to jcoloma@mail.sdsu.edu, and in the subject line, reference the title of this podcast. A special thank you to our guest today, Kim Giardina. Please join us next time as we explore other topics in the child welfare arena. I'm your host, James Coloma, and now go out there and inspire and innovate our child welfare field.